Hello there, good afternoon to you. Now, we've spent a fair amount of time, haven't we, on the criticisms being levelled at this Labour government on a number of fronts, whether it's the additional business taxation that was announced in the budget, whether it's the winter fuel allowance, and even the changes that we now know are going to come to that scrapping of the winter fuel allowance for most pensioners. We know that that threshold is going to change, but we won't find that out for a while yet. They've done something today that I think is a perfect example of where the government can shout about what it's doing and you know, not necessarily give itself a pat on the back. We've still got a long way to go to improve the country, haven't we, the country's fortunes, but to at least be able to tell you a positive story about something that they are doing. And that thing is a real extension of free school meals for the poorest of children and their families, the impact on their families that it will achieve. Let me just give you, before I talk to our guests, let me just paint a picture of free school meals in this country. The total number of children registered for free school meals is about 2.2 million, so just over a quarter of the total pupil population. Families in England, we're talking about here for the moment, they need to meet certain criteria for their children to be eligible. That can include receiving universal credit, but until the changes are implemented next September, parents also must have a household income of less than £7,400 a year, after tax, that is. And I think we can all agree that that is a very low salary if you're raising kids, and even if you're not. Parents have to apply for their children to receive them. The free school meals, and eligible children aren't automatically enrolled. So there's a bureaucratic process for the parents to go through. Earlier this year in February, MPs on the Cross-Party Education Committee called for that to change, that there should be an automatic enrolment because the DWP, the Treasury, can see who's on benefits, who's in receipt of universal credit, who's through their taxation can see who's earning that amount of money after tax. Bridget Phillipson has said there are no plans to introduce automatic enrolment at this stage, but children's eligibility for free school meals, it does vary across the UK. So, for example, all primary school children in London and in Wales can access free meals. In Scotland, all children in the first 5 years of primary school are eligible, so all of them, whatever their circumstances, as well as all children from families receiving the Scottish Child Payment Benefit. Parents in Northern Ireland can apply if they receive certain benefits and are below an income threshold, which is about double the current England level, which is £7,400. It is around £15,000 in Northern Ireland. So some differences, but, different rollouts of a similar policy. Today, the announcement that there will be 500,000 more families helped by this. I think it can only be described as good news. It can be partial good news. There could be thoughts, and in fact we'll hear some in a minute, thoughts of how differently the same families could have been helped in a more effective way. But what I want to know from you, first of all, is if this affects you, if receiving free school meals of any of those varieties I've just talked through is part of your life, how big a help is it? I mean, I imagine if you've got breakfast and lunch covered during the week by the school you're sending your child to, that probably saves you, 80 quid a month, something like that, 60 to 80 quid a month. You wouldn't sniff at that, would you, if you're really dealing with a budget? But that would be a help. It's £500-600 a year. So just let me know, if this affects you directly, how significant is that meal help via the school? 0345 6060 973, the usual number. You can text 84850. And, we can say whatever government has been in power over the last 40 years, we have not successfully reached child poverty targets, the reduction of those statistics. We've improved things here and there, then we've undone things and improved them again. But it really is a bit of a scandal, the state that some of our children are being brought up in, and the difficulties that their families are facing. Let's talk about this with Kate Anstey, Head of Education Policy at the Child Poverty Action Group. And we'll hear as well from Christine Farquharson in a moment, Associate Director of the IFS, who have thoughts on what else might be done. Kate, first of all, I'm guessing you welcome this.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, we at Child Poverty Action Group absolutely welcome this. This is a real kind of game changer for children and families. We are constantly sort of out there carrying out research and analysis on this issue. And we know that there are many children with, as you kind of talked about, that current threshold that currently misses around 1 in 3 children living in poverty. So this shift will make sure those children get access to that meal each day. That's good for children in terms of their learning, their time at school. It's also brilliant for parents to have that kind of peace of mind and money back in their pockets.
And is the shift you talk about, is it that under these changes, any child in England whose parents receive universal credit will be able to claim free school meals from September of next year? Is that the shift, so that there is less need for the bureaucratic wrangling and making sure that somebody applies for it? Is that the shift?
So the shift is that we would go from, as you said, this situation where currently there are some children who qualify, but that threshold is very low. It misses out lots of children living in poverty, and some of those, those children in poverty, those on universal credit, they're currently excluded. That means those children are going to school at the moment, worrying about food, asking friends if they can borrow money and food, sometimes missing school because they don't have money for food. So those children will be directly affected. They'll now get access to that free school meal. I think it is right to say that, because now it's linked to universal credit, that will hopefully smooth out the kind of registration process. That will make things easier. But obviously there will be kind of lots to discuss in the detail of that. But the shift is that we are now talking about a much larger group of children getting access to a school meal.
I understand. So the £7,400 threshold was causing some who may have been just above that to still be really suffering and in need of this support, and they're going to get it now.
Absolutely.
And have you been able to calculate how much it will save? I've read different accounts of how much, say, per year or per month it would help a family.
Yeah, so schools kind of have varying amounts in terms of how much they charge, and there are kind of differences. But what's out there in terms of that £500 saving, we certainly feel that it will save families at least that amount a year, so £500 per child a year, because they no longer have to worry about that meal during the school day, and whether they're kind of paying for the meals or providing packed lunches, it comes with a significant cost to families. So yes, we will see that money back into families' pockets. We'll see some families lifted above the poverty line as a result of this, and some families kind of moved out of less deep poverty. So it certainly is very welcome. I would say, of course, we want this to be, a step in the right direction, and we want to see more to come. And that is the government have said they're having that child poverty strategy in the autumn now, and we want to see significant investment in children through the social security system, particularly scrapping the 2-child limit.
Well, you've helpfully brought us right to where we need to be. Stay with us, Kate, and do feel free to come back on this. Christine Farquharson joins me, Associate Director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, the IFS. Good afternoon to you, Christine.
Hi there.
I mean, do you essentially agree with Kate that this is a good move, but there are other moves that can be made, could be made, and should be made?
There are absolutely other moves. Government always has choices here, but what today's announcement does is it extends eligibility to free school meals to the about 70% of children whose families get universal credit, but who weren't under that £7,400 household income cap before. So this is targeting families who are on low, although not the very lowest incomes.
Right. So it really scoops up a huge number more.
We estimate in the long term you're going to get about 1.7 million extra children eligible for free school meals. In the short term, because we have very generous transitional protections in place at the moment, that number is going to be considerably smaller.
Now, am I right in saying that the IFS thinks that scrapping the 2-child benefit cap would have been at this point an even better way to assist families?
It really depends what it is that you're trying to do. If all that you care about is the cost per child who gets lifted out of poverty, then removing the 2-child cap limit is a cheaper way per child lifted out of poverty. And that's because the 2-child limit is much more tightly linked to child poverty than even today's free school meals announcements were. But the total cost of the 2-child limit is quite a lot higher than today's announcement. And today's free school meals announcement also has potentially benefits for academic attainment and children's health and some of these wider outcomes. Once you start to factor all of those things in, that might lead you to a different decision as well.
So the 2-child benefit, do you still insist that should still be on the cards here?
It depends what the government is looking to do, and it depends what's in budget. So the getting rid of the 2-child limit entirely would cost about £2.5 billion. That's about two and a half times as much as the cost of today's free school meals policy in the long run. So, there is a choice here, and we are in a situation where spending on public services is quite tight. We're going to find that next week at the spending review. Spending on welfare, we're trying to make efficiencies. We're worried about tax rises. We're worried about borrowing more. These are all trade-offs that have to be made within that overall fiscal context.
There's strangely conflicting messages around children in this country, don't we, and families. This is a point that both of you feel free to comment on. I just noticed that in his response to today's news, Mel Stride, and again asked about the two-child benefit cap, was saying he doesn't think it's unreasonable under the economic circumstances that we have, that we are in, to have a cap at two-child level for those who would otherwise be relying on benefits for further children. And yet at the same time, we have politicians of all stripes saying, well, most stripes anyway, have more children, we need more children. And the fact is that being stingy with families is, well, stingy, that's my language, not yours. Being stingy with families is being stingy with children, isn't it? And it's almost punishing a child for having too many siblings. Kate, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to say that at the moment that policy, that two-child limit, is currently pulling 109 children into poverty every day as it's kind of continues to be rolled out. So the government has come into power with a commitment to reduce child poverty.
You mean totting up 1 million a day?
Sorry, over 100 children a day are being pulled below the poverty line because of that policy. So as more are born, they become affected by that policy. So it is the biggest driver of rising child poverty. If no government action is taken on it, then the numbers at the end of this parliament, there'll be sort of higher rates of child poverty than there were at the start. So that, as I say, government have come in with an agenda to reduce child poverty. They absolutely have to get rid of that policy as a starting point. It is only sort of having a negative effect on children and families. There is no good that is coming of it. So we want to say that this today is a leap forward. It's a game changer for families. But actually, if the government wants to kind of stand by that promise and come good on its promise to children and families, that cap has to go in the autumn. And then children will be able to feel the full benefits of changes like today. It will kind of turbocharge other policies when you don't have children being kind of constantly pulled into poverty by that other policy.
Your thoughts on that, Christine?
I think if you look back at the original motivation or the original logic that politicians set out around the two-child limit, it was around encouraging families on lower incomes and receipt of benefits to think twice about how many children they could afford to have. Essentially, that was the messaging. And so you're right that if we take that to today's world, where politicians of many stripes are saying, actually, the problem here is we're not having enough children in the country.
Go forth and multiply is what they're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, that does sit oddly, but the benefit of the two-child limit from the government's point of view, or certainly from Treasury's point of view, is that £2.5 billion price tag. So there is going to be the question, if you want to get rid of that policy, how are you going to fund that? What taxes are you going to raise, or what other thing are you going to choose not to do?
And also, as you both know, most people know that it can be short-termist to save that amount of money, because further down the line, children growing up in poverty often don't have as good an educational outcome as others. They can end up in criminality that wouldn't have previously happened. No, I'm not suggesting everybody does. I'm just saying that we know there are patterns here that lead to poor educational outcomes, to prison, to time in care, you name it. It can be short-sighted.
I suppose on that point, at CPAG, we estimate that child poverty currently costs us around 40 billion a year in terms of, as you say, some of the spending
knock-on effects of it
on health and education and the lost revenue on taxes. So absolutely, at the moment, we're losing that money, where rather we should be investing in children, because that's good for children now in their childhoods, and it's good for society in the long run.
Thank you very much to both of you, to Kate Anstey, the last voice you heard there, Head of Education Policy at the Child Poverty Action Group, and to Christine Farquharson, Associate Director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies. Always keen to hear from you directly about your own lives. If this affects you, if you're in receipt of universal credit and have children at school age, you will now, if you don't already, receive free school meal. Will that tell me how you think that will really help you? And will free school meals more generally, more extended, rolled out more, put a serious dent in the problem of child poverty? Or does the government have to start facing the facts that organisations up and down the land who are daily working with child poverty issues say that it has to be the scrapping of the two-child benefit cap. 0345 6060 973, the number. You can text 84850. Look forward to talking to you. It's 1:19.
LBC.
I'm told the Prime Minister has just been talking about the very thing we're talking about. How about that for being on the money? We'll get that to you as soon as we can, the audio of the Prime Minister speaking about this move on free school meals for children. Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, saying today it will bring 500,000 families into free school meals, and therefore, significant help to those families. I'm particularly keen to talk to you about food costs, actually, because, I think if you're comfortably off or relatively comfortably off, and yes, tightening your belt, and yes, feeling the economic circumstances we are in, it might be easy to say, oh God, feed your own kids. Everyone can feed their kids. But the cost of food has been going up and up and up and up. It really has. And we know that pace of increase has slowed down a bit, but from the heights of, 10% inflation. But that's a lot for a family. For some families, that's a lot. So this will obviously help some families. But do you think that we should go further with that child benefit cap and scrap it? And will this policy really put a dent in the problem of child poverty? 0345 6060 973. Wages are a big part of this as well. Matt has called from Nottingham. Hello, Matt.
Oh, you're right, Sheila. It's always a pleasure to speak to you, and your shows are always brilliant.
Thank you.
But it just frustrates me. It does, and I'm not against it. I think it's brilliant that they're tackling the issue and they're bringing more kids in line with other kids who have got free school meals. It's just that I can't understand why they can't just do it across the board. Just every child deserves a meal in school, and to make sure they get a meal in school, because not every parent who has the money will give the money over. It's just human nature, that is. So they should be making.
You mean they won't pass it on to the child?
Yeah, not every parent will have the mindset of actually passing the money onto the child and making sure the child's fed. They won't have that mindset. So I think it's a bit unfair to a lot of children as well. Do
you not think, though, Matt, you're right, there will be some absolute recalcitrants who don't, but do you not think that the vast majority of parents really do want their kids to be okay?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not saying that they don't. I just think it should be across the board, because I work around about 50 to 60 hours a week. And I'm on a good wage, I am, but I pay out a lot of tax. I've got other... my circumstances are increasing every year.
Yeah.
The cost is increasing, so it is a burden on me.
And you're doing what you're expected to do, which is to work hard and look after your family.
Yeah, and a lot of these people who will get the free school meals, and nothing against the kids, but they refuse to work over a certain number of hours, and that's another topic. I know it is for another day, but it frustrates me with that side.
You mean because of benefits?
Yes, yeah. But I want to point out something, Sheila, about the two-child cap limit. Yeah. Now, what about the parents with one child? They're still going to be in poverty. Haven't they thought about this?
In what way?
So you're going to lift they're on about lifting the two-child cap, which will be brilliant for the parents with 3, 4, 5 kids, and that they'll lift them out of poverty a little bit. But what about the ones that are with one child and they're in poverty anyway? They're not getting any more, are they?
No, but they're not getting any more anyway now, as it stands now, if they've only got one child.
But so lift it.
Well, that takes us... Yeah, I mean, but you can't create a policy that gives you things that you don't actually need, can you, I suppose?
I just wanted to put that out there,
a different sort of constituency of parents, definitely.
Yeah.
But I suppose they will be helped, those who are in poverty, they will be helped by other moves.
Poverty thing, Sheila, why don't they make school uniforms free? Why don't they make certain criteria for children?
Or just way cheaper, get rid of all this fancy schmancy stuff.
No, because children are required to wear a school uniform. This frustrates me as well. The schools require you to wear a school uniform. Me at work, I go to work and my company that I work for pays for my uniform. If they don't, we don't go to work in the uniform. We don't show off the brand. So what frustrates me is schools are sat there going, you need to wear this, you need to wear that. But, it's costing the parents.
And do your kids go to a school where they have to have the fancy schmancy uniforms?
She will do, yeah. She's going into year 3. She's a brilliant school in the Solihull area it is, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's a nice uniform, but it's expensive. Yeah. It is. Yeah. Even for me, it's another cost, which I've got to take out the budget, out of the finance, and, there's not much left over, and I do feel for the parents who
So you say England should go the way that London has gone, all primary school children anyway, having free meals, all children in the first 5 years of primary school in Scotland.
Make sure they're fed. A fed child is what do they say?
It's a ready child. Well, it's a ready child, isn't it?
A fed child's an engaged child, a ready child for school, and that because not every child's going to have breakfast as well. This is the issue.
Which is why. Well, then again, the government could and should out loud point to the extension of breakfast clubs as well. Thanks, Matt. Best of luck finding that uniform, Matt in Nottingham, or the money for that uniform. David's called from Leeds. Hello, David.
Hello. Very similar to your last caller. I would benefit from an additional child payment. Don't need it, but would benefit from it. However, I'm very of the mindset that people who make the financial decision to have a child and the financial commitment to have a child wouldn't go on then to make better financial decisions with more money. So if they're making a decision to have a child they can't afford, giving them more money is not going to...
It's not always a decision, is it? You can find yourself pregnant and... you can.
You can find yourself pregnant, but you have to obviously take part in the act of getting pregnant, and that is a decision and a risk within itself, right?
So but we need... David, breaking news, people have sex.
Yes, they do, and things happen. If they don't have it safely, that's up to them.
No, but you can have it safely and still find that you're pregnant. I've had that happen to friends.
That is a very, very low number, given the statistics that are out there. Yes, absolutely. But again, I'm with your other caller. The money should go into a central pot. It should be given to schools, and every child should have the same level of start in life. They should be fed and well educated. People who have a child that they can't afford or they've got no chance of being able to afford are not going to make better decisions with more money. It shouldn't.
How many kids do you have?
I have 3.
So you get... What do you get in terms of child benefit for them, just for the first 2?
We did get for the first 2. However, I now earn enough to be outside of the cap, I believe.
So the 2 child benefit cap restricts child tax credit and universal tax credit to the first 2 children. So it's connected to those benefits, isn't it, or those credits, universal credit or child tax credit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in order for us to have a 3rd child, I went and sought additional training and got a better job that could then financially support that 3rd child. We didn't have one. There is a bigger gap between the 2nd and the 3rd in our family because we didn't have another child because I knew that I would struggle to afford one. I'll give them a level of comfort that I would want to give to my children. It's about being able to make those decisions. Give it to the schools. Let them support every child the same and stop giving money to people who obviously don't make sensible, structured financial decisions. That's a bit unfair. I'm sure within the numbers there are people who you could describe like that, David, but an awful lot of people are not poor because they're making bad financial decisions. There's all kinds of complexities that can leave a person in poverty. That's not quite a fair comment. It might be about a couple of people, but not the broad sweep of people. David, thank you. David in Leeds. This is what the Prime Minister had to say on the free school meals announcement in the last few minutes.
This is a statement of intent. It's something that we've been wanting to do for a long time. It's the first time it's ever been done. So free school meals for 500,000 extra children. That's fantastic in terms of them and their attainment. It's fantastic for their parents because it saves about £500. I would see it as part of a wider package because we've already done work on childcare, on breakfast clubs, on school uniforms. So it's about attainment of children and giving them the best possible start in life. It's also centrally a cost of living issue for their parents.
That's Prime Minister speaking on the very topic we are talking about now. And given what the last couple of calls have said about where the focus should be if you're going to help families, why don't we broaden it out a bit, given what the Prime Minister just said there about the other moves they've made on school uniform? And they have made some fairly modest moves on school uniforms that will help some families. Do you think funding meals and making school uniforms cheaper, less restrictive in what kids can wear, or were they by what they were? Are they better moves than simply adding benefit to families? Because, of course, once you add the benefit to the family, you don't quite know what they're doing with that money, do you? Is that a better way? 0345 6060 973. Maybe you think all of the above is the answer.